Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tabletop RPG Showcase. I'm Steven,
I'm Dan.
and we're looking at Beta Maxx X, spelled with two X's on Max, Supernova Edition. Boy, where do we even start with this game? this
It's an
game is
interesting one.
this game is wild. I guess we start where we always start. Let's start with the set. Let's first start with who it was written by and when it was published. So this was put out in 2018. It's a very, very recent game. And it was written by Andrew Churgwin. Andrew Churgwin.
Hope you pronounced that right.
Hope we pronounced that right. I probably of Halfling Caravan Games. I probably butchered that name, but that's okay. And there's some links there if you want to check out their stuff. They're pretty cool. This game's pretty cool and worth checking out. So let's start where we always start. Let's start with setting.
What
So
little there is.
there isn't one. It's base. It's like as like it's not almost non-existent, but it's got all the trappings that you need for a sci-fi, like any sort of space opera, cyberpunk, whatever sci-fi sort of game you want to do. And it has like little bits of ideas there, kept purposefully vague. There's a few interesting species of creature. There's humans, there's non-humans, there are a couple aliens, there's a couple fantasy races. There's a Matrix sort of thing like you find in Cyberpunk 2020 or Shadowrun. And there's some creatures that have interesting things, but otherwise it's relatively simple. They don't really make it like setting tide. It's pretty much a good little toolbox system, with maybe little bits of things, little inklings of things if you want to expound upon them. Anything
If you
bad?
read the examples, the fluff bits, there are plenty of setting bits in there, but none of them are part of a coherent whole.
They're just more like ideas. Yeah. All right, so let's get into making character, because this game is mostly crunch. It's mostly mechanics. It's almost entirely mechanics. Not really much fluff to deal to, per se. So, to make a character, you get points. Okay, let's just start at the beginning. You first choose a species. You can be a human, you can be a dwarf, you can be an elf, you can be a halfling. You can be an orc. Lots of typical fantasy races here. But then they also have Milanas and Olardum, which are your two sort of system-specific things that are a little bit more interesting races and alien races. Do you want to talk about those, Dan?
Just the two special ones.
Yeah.
So, the Milanas are one with technology, is the way they're described. They don't really. If they gain all sorts of benefits to technology racially, they are pretty much given tech implanted when they're as babies. They grow, it's their life, pretty much, in their description. Um,
And then the Olardum are the kind of the opposite. They're very completely try to stay as far away from advanced technology as possible.
yeah.
I think they're kind of cat people-ish. I think. I don't remember. I think that's what they are. Even looking at this, like it's not clear.
It never shows a picture of them that I've seen, and I
Yeah,
don't see anything that says they have cat ears or anything.
this is true, but they do have vertical pupils.
Yeah,
what they make a note of.
that's the only thing, and then they have short fingers and toes.
Right. And then you get to pick your like a pseudo life path sort of thing. You get to pick what your childhood was. You get to pick what your education was. Yeah, you get to pick very simple pseudo life path. You get to pick your childhood and your education, which gives you some skills, some wealth, and that's about it.
Possibly. Well, no, I guess they all give well.
Yeah. And from there you then get to sort of round out your character by picking points in traits, which is interesting because what they do is they group your traits, which are like attributes, by a column and row style of thing. You got your groups, which are body, mind, social, and magic. Pretty straightforward. But then they've got styles of power, endurance, subtlety, and cybertech. And the chart that you get out of that is all of your attributes or traits, as they call them, and how it's what the intersection of the row and column sort of tell you what the various traits are. Like body and power is strength. That makes sense. Or magic and cybertech means that you've got Techno Mansi. Social and subtlety is persuasion. Endurance and mind is willpower. It all sort of follows. And gives a very interesting way of laying out the various attributes in a way that's clear and easy to understand.
Yeah. And for character creation, it actually took me a minute to understand it because I didn't notice the groups and styles part of it at first. So I was going, what the hell am I supposed to do here?
Yeah.
And then when I finally noticed that and realized, okay, you can put 2 points in any body trait that is not body itself.
Yep. Then you can put 2 points
in any of the traits up to, and you can put both.
You can divvy up 2 ranks amongst your body's stuff. You can divvy up 2 ranks amongst your mind, 2 amongst your social, and 2 amongst your magic.
Put both in the same one, which is what I was double checking.
Right.
And you can. So, if you really want a strong character to start with, you could just focus into that.
You can also choose not to take any in the magic, and then you would get a few extra points, a few extra ranks to put in your other stuff if you want to just go non-magical. And then from there, you can then, as you get XP throughout the game, you can then use it to buy more ranks in your various traits or into the groups of traits themselves, which will apply to all of the traits underneath that group. And the XP costs are listed under each dot as you go up.
Yep. So in the end, you could say if you were doing a balancing check, where you had to go across the beam, you could have a body of 5 and an agility of 5 and have a plus 10 on your check.
Yeah, which we'll get into how that works as we go on. Oh yeah, and cybertech stuff. And we'll get then you get into skills, which you just have groups, as opposed to the groups and styles. You've got your combat group, your sciences group, network, vehicles, and magic. And each has 5 skills under each group. There is a lot of skills. There's a lot of points you can put into them, and you can come out with a wide variety of characters. This is an entirely classless system. So you can build. There's a lot of different sort of things you can build. A lot of different character types and archetypes and whatever you want that you can build from this. In the one game that I played of it, I've seen a sort of cyber monk, a cyber paladin, and then 2 different sorts of hackers. But that
was an interesting game.
That was an interesting game. And those were just people who wanted to get into the cyberware aspect of things. You could completely ignore that. You can do all sorts. You could do like drivers, you could do hackers, you can do, techies or doctors or medics or like all sorts of various sorts of mages, fighters, whatever you want to do. There's
My idea for that one character where I was essentially a magic biologist who was focused on splicing different organisms together,
Yep.
which it has rules for, which we can go over later.
Yep, there's all sorts of stuff you can do. And that's pretty much all there is to character creation. It's pretty straightforward. And then you just sort of get, I think you get a little bit of money that you can spend, but
I think that's based on your wealth.
yeah, it's based on your wealth, what you can get. And it's pretty, like, the money spending is pretty straightforward. It's basically, is it within your wealth? Then yes, you can get it. You get XP, you spend it on improving yourself, pretty straightforward. They also have a thing called character goals, which I always think is a great thing to have for a system. They have minor goals, which are pretty much the immediate, straightforward, right in the now. You have your moderate goals, which are a little bit more in the future, but not super far in the future. And then you have your major goals, which is like end game, like what you want to be your big end game goal to accomplish.
One of the examples for the major goals is, I'm the new CEO of Hulo Corporation.
Hulo Corporation. Exactly. And that's pretty much it for character creation. So let's get into the game itself. Game, you want to tackle this one, Dan?
Okay, I'll just start on the next page after the character creation ends, where it starts off with golden rule of dice. If there's no time pressure, put the dice away. It flat out says, if you don't need to, don't roll.
They want you to keep
Play
it
out.
snappy and fast.
Yeah. The system's focused on having fun with it. It's based off of, like, 80s and 90s action, sci-fi craziness. So, don't force players to roll a dice unless you need to, is the system's recommendation. Golden rule of cool. I love this one. If the player can present a good reason why they can do something, why they can use a particular trait or skill, they can do it.
Exactly.
So if you have creative players, they can have a hell of a lot of fun with this.
Oh yeah, there is all sorts of things you can do. Like if like I had players in my game that I ran just like managing to cram in like an attribute and like 3 different skills to like a few like 2 to 3 different attributes and like 3 different skills to make it so that they were like constantly rolling, just nailing everything they did, and with excess successes on everything. It was crazy. It's really fun. It's very loose. It's a very beer and pretzel sort of game, but I think that's what makes it so much fun, is that it's just like when you don't want to be serious and you just want to have a blast, this is a great game to pull out. It's easy to put together characters, and it's easy to understand the rules because it's just rule of cool. You just go, you know.
And then the game only uses 10-sided die.
Yeah, and it only uses 10-sided die, so it's pretty easy. Yeah, and like we said, you can get. Let's see, and then there's some other There's some other stuff like taking time or helping each other, etc. But the real thing I want to get into. Oh yeah, and then they have like how to do challenges, like a series of challenges or clusters or whatever, bypassing them, fighting, fixing, whatever, social, etc. But I want to get into the press my luck category of mechanics, because this is where I think the game really shines in like very clever game design, because these are sort of like mechanics that feel straight out of an action movie. And I love them because they really do fall under the rule of cool aspect of mechanics. And not many people... I've never really seen something like this in other tabletop RPGs, which is why I love it so much. But there's a few rules that they have that allow you to sort of boost your rolls and do better than normal. The first one is called Bad Day. Basically, the idea is you give a speech talking about what a bad day you've had, and how, like, if whoever is gonna stand in your way is gonna continue standing in your way, you're gonna give them a bad day. So when you call for the bad day rule, when using one of your traits, you can choose to re-roll any of your dice in the dice pool, but if any of the re-rolls are 0, then your day is about to get a lot worse, or maybe their day. Someone's day just got worse. Then there's the blue wire rule, which is the whole idea of, like, you know, when you're defusing the bomb and you're trying to remember which wire diffuses the bomb. You can, when incurring this rule, you need to be using skills, and when you do use this, you ignore whatever target you might have to roll above normally, and now becomes a 2. But if you don't get enough successes, then your day is about to get worse. It might get a lot worse, and the GM gets to let you find out about how much worse. There's 3 more. There's push it, which is, you know, you've seen as the book describes it countless times, you've seen the hero have to sprint across the room and dive behind a pile of something to avoid the fireball racing down the corridor. You've seen them do their best to burn the engine of their vehicle completely out as they try to speed their way through the closing doors. If you want to push it with something like running or swimming or similar, you may make it so your character succeeds at that task, but they also take a fatigue as well. So basically, auto success, but you're taking some damage for it. The last 2 is battle cry, which allows you to, you know, yell your awesome battle cry as you're fighting and take double the number of attacks during this combat action, but you do take a little bit of fatigue. And then my favorite, there is no plan B. Basically, once per one character in any session, and once, or whatever, like, you know, mini arc episode they call it, and once per character in each arc, you can use there is no plan B. That player announces a plan, no matter how ludicrous, and if they are questioned on how they're going to make that plan work, they only have to respond with a variation of there is no plan B. Then the ludicrous plan needs to succeed somehow. That doesn't mean it will succeed perfectly or cleanly or subtly or any other way, but then to get the team out of the jam that they're in and on to the next thing. So just come up with the stupid, ridiculous plan that you've always wanted to do in this situation, and it's going to work. Somehow it's going to work. Not well, necessarily, but it's going to work.
Not even necessarily. Not well, probably. Because you probably irritated the GM.
Yeah, probably. Or if you're playing this right, the GM's like, oh yeah, let's do it. And then gets to punish you with it, but it's going to be fun either way. And let's talk a little bit about fatigue and injuries. So it's basically you've got 2 sorts of health. You've got fatigue, which will knock you out if you run out of fatigue, and then injuries, which will kill you if you run out. That's pretty much all there is to it. They have some rules on healing, and it's pretty straightforward. That's just pretty much what it is. Let's see. They got some rules on social stuff. There is a cool little note here that they actually have a thing for dealing with AIs, which is that you use a different skill when dealing with AIs, because AIs are common enough, but don't run on the same rules that people do. So you use your Karatech skill when you want to do social with AIs.
There are rules for becoming an AI, so...
Yeah, there's that too. They have some rules on the network, which is basically the Matrix. They have information in here about that. It's pretty like much any Matrix you might think of, but defined really loosely, so you can do pretty much whatever you want with it. Got some information on terminals, uplinks, neurolinks, whatever, full upload, etc. Then we got some stuff on implants, which is interesting in that they don't give any real specific implants in here. It's entirely based upon your skills, really.
Yeah, I never really got that about...
So what I've gathered about it is it's basically like, okay, like each skill covers a different sort of cyber tech that you're getting installed, and if your role has to do with, whatever cyber tech you might have, because you can flavor the cyber tech however you want it, and if your role has something that is related to the cyber tech that you have, you can use the skill. And it's just straightforward. It's not like bogging you down in various rules of like all sorts of different cyberware that you might have. It just lets you flavor it how you like, and then says, okay, is this relevant to you or not? Okay, and that's pretty much it. This also covers Techno Mansi, which is a special form of magic having to do with cyberware and electronics, but we'll get into that in the magic section. Wealth. Wealth is also pretty straightforward. It basically says, okay, if you got whatever your wealth is, that you can get equipment and other stuff that's, I believe, equal to or lower than your wealth without any problem. But if you want something if you really need something, oh wait, no, that's what it is. No, it's not that if it's equal to or below. If you want to get something, you roll against your wealth. You treat wealth sort of like a skill.
Oh. So. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me double check again. Yeah, wealth. You can also just straight up burn wealth to get the successes you need whenever you want to buy something. It's a very interesting system. It's very different, but I kind of like it because it's like, sometimes your wealth doesn't get what you need. But if the wealthier you are, the better your chances are. It's definitely
a very similar mechanic.
It's definitely different, but very interesting. And they got some information on vehicles. You got rules for handling, high speed chases, pushing it, etc. A whole bunch of vehicles described, as well as their stats. We won't get too deep into that because that's kind of just basically equipment. But safe to say, there is everything from ground, water, air vehicles, hovercraft, space vehicles, if you want to go to space. And you can do all your action movie chases with this information. Oh yeah, you want to say something?
That's pretty much all of the purchasing stuff. So now we're into combat.
Yeah, let's get into combat. Yeah, I'll let you handle combat here, Dan.
So, it says it's standard round format. It says to keep it all going nice and quick, every round give the players a short period of time where they can all plan out their actions, so everyone's not just going, oh, okay, they did this, well, now I need to decide what I want to do. So that way everyone can plan out their actions ahead of time, and the whole round just goes by quick. And then it says it also recommends to use the press your luck stuff often.
Yeah.
At least often enough.
Just keep doing it.
Yep. And then you may not be a fighter. It doesn't say everyone. It says not everyone has to. You may be doing something else. You try to find other things to do if you're not a fighter. If you're fighting in a spaceship, try to attack the airlock. Try to do something else. You don't have to focus on taking the enemy out. Be creative. It's not just go right after the enemy every time.
Exactly.
And then it goes over what the weapon and attacks block looks like, which I'm sure you're seeing. Then you have the. Sorry, I haven't gotten to play it, so I'm not quite.
I'll talk about the combat real quick then. So basically, any given attack that you do will have how many dice are in your initial pool for the attack, which I believe is determined by, whatever skills and whatever attributes you want to use. It's usually related to, a specific attribute like your unarmed, your melee, your range, etc. And then you have the difficulty, because all weapons have a difficulty to use, which is the number you need to roll above to get successes. The lethality is how likely the weapon is to cause an injury, because what you do is you roll. We'll get into that. And then the damage, which is how much combat fatigue or injury would come from a successful attack. So basically the way it works is you make your roll using your... yes. And every weapon also has a number of attacks that you can make in a round. So, like, let's say you were using a... oh wait, never mind. No, the attacks is how many dice you get in your roll, in your initial pool, and then you can add on to that with your traits, and then with your traits, and I believe you can adjust it a little. No. I'm trying to remember exactly how it works, honestly. Yeah.
Roll dice equal to the attack.
Right, so... here we go. Yeah, here we go. Sorry. So yeah, you've got your attacks. That determines how many dice you get base because of how the weapon works. Like a Legwind utility knife gets 3 attacks. So you start with 3 dice. You add in your traits, any relevant traits you have. Like for that it would be melee. And then you've checked your difficulty starts off at, like, for the Legwind utility knife, it starts off at 6. However, your skills can drop this down. The number of times that you roll, the amount that you roll over that determines if you hit or not. And then the lethality, double checking here. You count the success, so you roll your attacks, compare it to your difficulty. You keep the number of successes you roll. The person you're attacking rolls their armor as a pool of d10s. Each armor die above the lethality of your weapon removes 1 die from the attack. So basically, the lethality determines how hard it is for armor to negate an attack from that. And then you roll your damage plus your attack successes to determine how much damage is done to the target. Funny enough, the successes are fatigues and the failures are injuries, because it's usually much harder to roll. Oh wait. Okay, my bad. Slightly off. You roll what's left of your attack successes against the target of the damage. There we go. So anything above the damage is fatigue. Anything below the damage difficulty is an injury. Because a lot of these weapons, it's a lot easier to roll a success than it is a failure. So it's a lot easier to do non-lethal damage than it is to do lethal damage.
And the weapons where it's easier to do lethal damage, it's actually harder to just hit in general.
And it's also harder to not do lethal damage.
Yes.
If you're trying to not do lethal damage. So it's an interesting system. It's a little confusing at first, but once you get into the swing of it, it's actually really easy.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those where it sounds more complex than it is.
Exactly. And then the last thing is armor. Something that was confusing to us because we didn't realize it, but basically whenever you roll your armor, you tally up all 3 columns, and that determines how many dice you get to roll against the lethality of a weapon. Also, where it's listed, where the cost is listed, here's how that works. This is where now I'm remembering how wealth works. The way it works is you roll wealth. You roll a number of dice equal to your wealth. The cost determines how high or what you need to roll against.
Get the item.
Exactly. So T is the target number. So like if you want to get Dent Armaments 225, you would need to roll above a 3 and get 1 success. and that's it. And then you would have the weapon. However, if you wanted to get something more expensive or hard to get, you could burn ranks of wealth to get that weapon or that armor or that whatever.
Like a Jorus charge launcher, where you have a target number of 7, and you have to get 3 successes.
My players use one of those in the game we played. That was wild.
They got that to start?
No, it was in sort of like near the end, but it was hilarious. Now let's get into magic. Magic is pretty cool. Basically, each category of magic has a few spells you can use. You've got four categories of magic are sorcery, corpomancy, mysticism, and Techno Mansi. Sorcery is your sort of straightforward magic. It produces, and most arcane. It gives you the spells push-pull, which allows you to move objects around you, sort of like telekinesis. And
one thing,
yeah,
all spells have a base target, base successes required, and then you can modify that with different effects.
Exactly.
Such as with push-pull, you can change the range. You can use it. Gets more. You can raises the target if you use it for an attack.
Or have longer range or other things like that. Yep.
And then you need more successes for every object you manipulate.
Yeah. So, as you get better with your magic, you can use more. You can incorporate more of these effects and other things like that to make your magic better. But it's going to come at a cost of being more difficult to cast. Hence, why you're going to need to be better to cast it. So yeah, you get
really push your luck.
Exactly. So sorcery gets push-pull, which is sort of like telekinesis. Produce element, which allows you to produce electricity, fire, freezing, cold, and acids, and that has all sorts of uses, including attacks, and just making it appear. You get shielding, fry circuits, and jump fly. Jump fly being that you can make people fly.
Fly if it's difficult enough.
Yeah, exactly. Corpomancy has to deal with changing your physical body and the physical bodies of others. This includes harden, which gives you armor, plasticize, which allows you or others to become gelatinous. Or it allows you to become. Oh no, never mind. Allows you or others to become gelatinous or cloud-like. Rejuvenate, which allows for healing. Reject, which you can make a body forcibly reject a cybertech implant, which is cool. And reshape part to sort of change, your fingers into a key, your arm into a wood saw, your feet into wheels or skis or roller skates. Mysticism is sort of like the more esoteric magic. It has to deal with mental stuff. The first is forget, which allows you to just make people forget stuff. Good idea, which is you give someone a good idea of your choosing.
It does have time limits.
It does have time limits.
It's still very useful because you could kidnap somebody up to a day, and if you roll well enough, they forget the whole thing.
Yeah, that's for forget. Good idea allows you to just implant an idea. And that doesn't have a time limit on it. Yeah. Invisible, which, is exactly what it sounds like. Clarity, which allows you to see better and spot things better. And also helps you protect better against effects that would affect your mind. And Farsight, which lets you, increase the ability of your normal senses. And then the last one is Techno Mansi, which is a weird one, but really cool because it's got spells dealing with tech. You got Kludge, which allows you to fake a small piece of information, such as a username, a person's name, a note address, a scan card code, or similar. Stealth, which allows you to try to cover up where you are in the net or where you have been in the network. Cook the host, which causes the software to overheat the hardware and cause damage to the host of the cybertech or equipment. Mage Admin. You force an AI, cybertech, or other network device to give up an item of critical information. And network failure. You force a number of cybertech, electronic, or network equipment to disconnect from the network. So, all sorts of really, really useful stuff. Then they also get into the magic skills, which is sort of how you go about doing various spells. Because you can flavor it.
Separate.
What?
These are the actual skills, not the magic traits.
Yes, these are. It's sort of like the traits determine what magic you get access to, and then the skills determine how you do said magic.
No, because you got ritual, which is its own skill. It has divination, wards, projection, imprinting, understanding.
Oh, that's true. And then you have enchantment, and then you have enchantment, which is another thing.
Own very unique thing. And see the thing.
Oh, some of it. Oh, that's what it is. Yeah, you can still use your magic skills in order to sort of flavor how you're doing magic and reduce
and enhance them.
And enhance them and reduce this, reduce the difficulties various roles by dropping down the difficulty number. But some of them, as it says here, give you access to other abilities, like ritual gives you access to all this stuff: divination, wards, projection, imprinting, understanding, alchematurgy, and proteomaturgy.
That's the one that I was talking about at the beginning, where you can fuse creatures together.
Right.
You need ritual, and you want medicine, xenobiology, and magobiology all to be at high ranks. And it allows you to just take magical creatures, mundane creatures, and turn them into a chimera.
Yeah.
And you can add in cybertech into it that allows you to control it.
Yep. And then there's also enchantment, which allows you to add things like armor, a constant magic spell, or spells that turn off and on or whatever, which is also really cool.
Yeah.
Then we get into just notes for the GM, which is pretty straightforward, just sort of advice on how to run things. And then we also...
I love it. Don't be afraid of tropes.
Exactly. And then we also get a short monster manual, which is mostly just sort of modifiers to stat blocks to make them into any given thing. Like, you basically, it says, okay, stat up a thing, and then you can slap on this template. And then you've got everything from cyber ghosts to dragons to space dragons to actual ghosts, giants, hagfish, intergalactic, harvesters, which are awful, horda, ophidian, skeleton, zombies, and some boosted species that are basically like something extra on top of their original species, like cyber vampires, cyber wares, which are really weird, and vampires. And then you got some network species.
You can become the boosted species if you're infected.
Exactly. And then there's also some network species, which are special monsters for the network itself. And then it just has some reference tables, which are very useful for the GM.
And even if you're not the GM, it's just very useful because you know, this cost, this has, whatever.
Yeah.
You don't have to go searching through the book.
So overall, it's a pretty short and simple system. It's only 60 pages long. Granted, those are all double pages, so I guess it's kind of 120, but it's really, really short. But in that short space, it covers a lot of stuff and gives you a lot of fun toys to make a really balls to the walls action-y sort of game that's just like straight out of an 80s action movie.
Yeah, you just have to be willing. It's just like Atomic Highway. You have to be willing to create your own setting.
Create your own setting, create your own fun, and basically just turn your brain off a bit and just roll with the fun, crazy gonzo stuff you can come up with.
Yeah. Crazy stuff is kind of a key thing when your characters can reshape their body however they wish with corpomancy.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I guess that's pretty much it for this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't think of anything else. So. Oh, there is fillable character sheets.
There is fillable character sheets available on their website, which is very, very useful. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I would go you can check out Beta Maxx X. It does actually have some other iterations, like a sort of horror system. They have a sort of, I think it's either fantasy or some sort of Indiana Jones style system as well, running on the same engine. Yeah, that's right. It was a slasher horror version, and a sort of Indiana Jones version, and I think a Cthulhu version as well, all running on the same engine. You can check them.
You mentioned some of those before.
Yeah, you can check them out at halflingcaravangames.com.au, and feel free to check them out. I would highly recommend picking it up. It's not that expensive, and it's a lot of fun. And with that, I guess we'll leave it off there. And we'll see you next episode, where who knows what we'll be reviewing, but hopefully we'll have some devs on with us next time. And with that, we'll see you all next time. Bye for now.